Hey, Nichole Huntsman, your astrologer from moderncosmic.com. I'm here today, got some time to do some videos, so I'm excited. We're going to talk about Mercury today. Mercury is the planet in the birth chart, and it's the planet in astrology that we associate with the thinking process, thinking and communicating. So with Mercury, obviously, we're going to look at this just sort of as a general sort of overview of Mercury, but if you're thinking about how you interrelate with other people, obviously communication is something where there's some sort of information being transmitted from one person to another, whether it's verbally, whether it's through written communication, some would say psychic communication, etc. Now, with Mercury, people's communication style, their way of expressing themselves, typically, you've got someone who's sort of a talker, and you've got someone who's sort of more of a listener. So the person who we would think of as the talker is going to be expressing themselves in an outward, masculine, dynamic way, all right? The person who is more of a listener, that's the feminine. That's feminine, that's more of an introverted thinking style. It's more of a listening style. It's the kind where they're going to take time to sort of mull things over in their head. They're going to observe and wait until they, jump into the conversation. They tend to be a little bit more the types that are going to ruminate over something rather than just spontaneously, instantly have something to say. So with astrology, if you want to understand how somebody's brain works, you want to understand their thinking style, first of all, let's look at, we just talked about the poles, the masculine, feminine. Next, look at the modality. So we're going to divide up the zodiac signs into the different modes. We've got 3 different modes, okay? First, we've got the cardinal signs, and these are the 4 signs of Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. Now these types, the cardinal signs, are all about sort of affecting change in the world around them. And they do it in slightly different ways. As you'll see, I'm going to go through each zodiac sign on the Mercury to sort of give you the high side and possibly the challenges or the low side when it comes to thinking processes and communication for the zodiac signs. So first and foremost with the cardinals, let's start with Aries. Aries is a fire sign. Aries is, their communication style tends to be direct, to the point. It can be a little bit cutting, or it can be slightly impatient, but there is a decisiveness there, which is helpful with Mars when you're in situations like in business or trying to get something done. A lot of times they will jump and then look, so leap and then look instead of looking and then leaping. And there is, if you look at the Mars, by the way, so if you look at the Mars, it's going to tell you how this Aries Mercury, it's going to add an element to the way that they're sort of decisive with their communication. So for example, if you've got somebody who, let's say they've got their Mars and Pisces, all right, that's going to make their communication style, they'll still have the impatience and the aggressiveness and the assertiveness of the Mercury in Aries, but it will have a little bit more of a fantasy element to it, or perhaps more of an artistic, dreamy side to it. They can get a little bit, it's a little bit more sensitive. It's a little bit more about wanting to sort of be understood by the partner. And Pisces likes the fusion of two people's minds, like the mind meld. So there can be a little bit of an interest in sort of perhaps, if not art, if not creativity, then sort of psychic or spiritual phenomena, things like that. All right. If we move on to the next cardinal sign, Cancer. Cancer is our water sign. Cancers are definitely feminine. So see, Aries is masculine, so it's that outward expression. They're decisive, making things happen in the world around them, cutting, right, making decisions. Cancer is more introverted. Cancer wants to definitely, they're listening. They're more of an absorbing, feminine, receptive expression of communication. What can happen with Cancer is they'll hold things in sometimes. They are feeling based. They're very intuitive, the way their minds work. But if they're upset, they can be passive aggressive with their words. They can be not saying everything, not really telling you what they really think until maybe they have a little blow up. Look at their moon. That will tell you help modify the expression of this Mercury. So for example, if let's say you've got Cancer, I'll use one that I know because I've actually had several people in my life with Cancer, Mercury, Capricorn, Moon. This is one where there's a practicality to the communication style. There's a skepticism, while they're also interested in they're feeling based, right? So like if you have a problem and you're talking to them, they're going to listen to you, and then they're going to try and help you solve the problem. They're going to try to help you in a very masculine, Capricorn, directed manner, figure out a solution to your problem. So you've got to look at again, the ruler of that Mercury. Now, let's move on to our next cardinal sign, our third cardinal sign, which is Libra. And Libra is our sign that has to do with partnership. Libra is ruled by Venus, so Libra wants to harmonize, socialize, bring together. There's tact, there's diplomacy, there's kindness. Now, with that sort of people-pleasing element of the Mercury in Libra, you can also have the glossing over the truth side of things, right? Like, let's not look at the ugly truth. Let's just focus on this part that doesn't hurt anybody's feelings or doesn't ruffle feathers. This can happen. Would be a lower functioning version if you've got a Libra Mercury and you realize you're holding things in and not confronting issues that need to be confronted, then, maybe that's something to work on. Now, look at the Venus. So let's say you've got someone who's got this Mercury in Libra, but they've got a Venus in, Scorpio. Okay, Venus and Scorpio, this person is actually probably going to be a little bit more direct with their communication style, although they might also be a little bit more private. They might be a little bit more secretive. They might sort of hold things a little closer to the chest and have more depth to the way that they use this. They might be a little more obsessive with what they're thinking about. Like if they're, especially in Libra, if they're sort of in love with someone, I can see this being that placement of someone who sort of doesn't let go, they tenaciously grab on and sort of cyber stalk. I always think of Scorpio, Pluto elements as in our modern world being, the possibility you're going to be researching someone intensely via the internet or whatever means of research you can use. And there's this holding on to one's position as well with Scorpio, at this Venus ruling this Libra Mercury. So look at the Venus, all right, and it's going to give you some information about how, again, this Mercury in Libra is used. Next, we've got our fourth cardinal sign, which we Capricorn. Capricorn, this is the sign I always sort of equate Capricorn to the archetype of the father. Capricorn Mercury is concrete. They don't like abstraction. They like things to make practical sense. They can have they have a desire to show up and say things in the right way. They don't like to look dumb. They like to look like they're proficient, like they know what they're talking about, that they are well studied, they're well prepared for the discussion or for whatever it is that they're needing to use their Mercury. They're also, because it is an earth sign, there is an element to Capricorn of needing to take their time, sometimes making a decision, or needing to know all the facts and then looking at all of them and then deciding. Okay, so that's that. It's an earth sign, so it's a little bit more slow, more careful, cautious, and secure. But yes, very practical. They'd be practical advice givers. They'd also be interested in, as I said, being seen as someone who says things the right way, who has a mind that is well attuned, someone who is in the real world, sensible, etc. Okay, now let's go on to the fixed signs. So with the fixed signs, these are our signs that tend to have more of a rigidity to their expression. The fixed signs are our opinionated of the Mercury signs. These are the ones that are quite opinionated. They can be a little bit. Also, you got to look at house placement. You could have someone with cardinal or mutable signs. If it's in a fixed house, it's going to give them these qualities and vice versa. So if you've got fixed signs, fixed Mercury, they're the types that they'll sort of make up their mind about something and then that's it. So if they believe something, if they're skeptical about something, it's very hard to change their mind. They kind of are where they're at, and good luck trying to persuade them otherwise. Now, let's start first with Taurus. So Taurus, this is our earthy fixed sign. Taurus is a sign that's ruled by Venus. They like harmony in their communication. Taurus to me is, you've got to look at the whole chart, but there is, again, a grounded, sensible, practical style of communication with a Taurus. They're not necessarily going to be, there definitely is this like being opinionated, taking their time. They can be I've got a daughter with this, but hers is in her 12th house, so that kind of modifies it quite a bit. But it's, they prefer concrete facts. So if you're talking to them in abstraction, they're the clients of mine that are like, I don't know what you're saying. I have no idea what you mean by that. They like just to tell me in real world, plain English, what you mean. Give me a scenario and an example. So with Taurus, they can be a little bit dogmatic. They can also, if you've got someone who's a Taurus Mercury who's poorly functioning, they can try to sort of bully their way or just force their opinion on someone, or they can be very strong-willed, strong-minded, stubborn, those sort of characteristic keywords that we apply to Taurus, but it has to do with their communication style. So they'll think that what they think is correct, and they're going to try and get you to think what they think. That's a poorly, a lower functioning version of a Taurus Mercury. Now, our next fixed sign would be Leo. So with Leo, we have this archetype of, the king or the queen. It's this ruled by the sun. Oh, and by the way, I apologize. I didn't even mention this, my bad. With Capricorn, look at the Saturn, where Saturn falls, to give you more information about that Capricorn Mercury. With Taurus, look at Venus, where Venus falls. That will give you information about this Taurus Venus. Now with Leo, ruled by the sun, anytime you have any of the planets in Leo, you have to consider the fact that that planet is ruled by this person's sun, this person's life force, their ego, their desire to show up in the world, okay? So Mercury in Leo, there is a pride there. There's a boldness. There's a need to be heard. Mercury and Leos aren't the kind that just go sit in a corner like a wallflower. You could have a very sort of introverted chart, but with the Mercury and Leo, there's going to be this desire. This person feels like what they think needs to be heard, that it needs to be, and also that it needs to be right. They do have a tendency to want to be correct and to want to be right, even if they kind of maybe know they aren't. They're still going to try and convince you that they're right. That can happen sometimes with, it's the king or the queen. Just think about the king and the queen. They're right. They're always right. Yeah. Again, look at that sun. The sun placement makes a big difference as far as how this Mercury is going to express itself. So you've got a Virgo sun with a Leo Mercury. It's very different from having a Leo sun with a Leo Mercury, all right? Quite different. Two very different people. Next, let's look at our next sign would be Scorpio, our next fixed sign. So Scorpio, water. Scorpio is a feminine sign, while all the fire signs and the air signs are going to be, extroverted. The water and the earth signs are introverted, meaning they're more about taking the information in, absorbing it, and then sort of deciding what to do with it. Scorpio is, of all the signs, the most private. Scorpio Mercury, they're private, they're strategic, they can be obsessive even. They can also desire to have control over, the conversation, or have control over, I was married to a great guy, but he's got his Mercury in Scorpio, and I'll give you some concrete examples. For example, when we were having a discussion about something, and he was trying to convince me of his way of thinking, if we had a disagreement, his thing was, he would always say, well, don't you agree? Well, don't you agree with this perspective? And I'm sitting here going, no, I don't agree. Not at all. But they try to control and almost get inside of the other person's headspace in a sense. And as though, they want to have that control over that other person's way of thinking. So they can be a little bit manipulative, for sure. They have this ability to understand psychology quite well. So many times they're great at giving advice. They're great at knowing socially kind of what to do, or they're the ones that are really great to have. My best friend has this as well. Really good at, can you read this for me and tell me what this person meant? Because I have no idea what this person is trying to say to me. And she'll read it. She'll be like, la, 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 la. It's all that, it gets all underneath to the bottom of the psychology, what the person was really saying. So with that can also come, they sometimes will read into things you're saying and think you're saying something you're not saying. So that's a knife that cuts both ways. All right, on to our fourth fixed sign. We've got Aquarius. So this is fixed air. Now, Aquarius, these are our visionary individuals. There's a quality of thinking to Aquarius that is a little eccentric. It's a little on the edge, a little fringe. They are social creatures many times. They enjoy conversation with other people. They're the ones on social media. I actually have a really good friend. He's got an Aquarius Mercury, and he posts on social media all the time. He's always like doing polls and asking people's opinions, and they're very much about interacting with other people, but they're also kind of offbeat. They kind of do things in their own way. If this is showing up in a way that's if this is showing up in a chart where it's less than helpful or on the low functioning side, you can have someone who's sort of a know-it-all. Aquarius, ruled by Uranus. Uranus is again, Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, traditionally by Mars. So look at those two planets to get a feel for the Scorpio Mercuries. verbal, or their thinking style, or their communication style. What is driving their secrecy, Okay, but with Aquarius, ruled by Uranus, traditionally by Saturn. So look at those two planets as well to see, Uranus is generational. So it's, everybody their same age is going to have their Uranus in about the same place. So look at the house placement, but do look at the zodiac sign because it's going to speak to this person's communication style is informed by the collective. It's informed by the social group that they grew up with. So it's an important part of understanding how they communicate and how they think. That's why they're visionaries many times. They're the ones that are iconoclasts. They're the ones who will come up with things that, sort of breaking the boundaries of convention and having that eccentricity to the way that they think, or that sort of, this conventional way of doing things isn't working very well. Why don't we try it this other way? All right, that's Aquarius. Now, the problem also with Aquarius, ruled by Uranus, Uranus can be cold, so can Saturn. Uranus can be a little detached. It's not about the personal with Uranus. It's about the collective. It's about everybody. And so this Mercury can be one, you can see this in people who are really skeptical, or people who are scientifically minded, or who are more logic-based in their thinking. They can be more rational, sort of prove it to me. And because they're a fixed sign, they're a little more stubborn and opinionated. And so they can be the ones that are, as I said, skeptical, or once they've decided something, though, if they're open to learning about something, then that's a different story, okay? You've got, it depends on the placements of the Saturn and the Uranus for that Aquarius Mercury. Now, let's move on to our mutable signs. So with our mutable signs, there is meaning. Mutable signs all share this desire to find meaning in existence. And they do it in different ways because, of course, we've got the four elements. All the four elements, each of them is going to do meaning in a slightly different way. Now, we start with Gemini and Air sign. This sign is looking for meaning through communication, ideas, exploration. All of the mutable signs are actually exploration and process-based signs. I always say to people, they come to me when I've been having tons of mutable sun, moon risings lately because of, I suppose all the transits and whatnot in the sky and the heavens right now this year, but they want me to tell them what to do. And it's really funny because with mutable signs, I'll go through their chart and I'm like, gosh, you could do a lot of different things with this situation. You have to decide. And in fact, it's as though they have to experience the not knowing and the kind of leaning into the unknown territory and then feeling their way in the dark and until they bump into something that works for them. Okay, so Gemini, ruled by Mercury, so look at the, not look at the Mercury, what am I saying? We're talking about Mercury. Gemini Mercury, this is someone this Mercury is dignified. This Mercury is very strong. It's very different, the Gemini Mercury versus the Virgo Mercury. Gemini Mercury is just very chatty, very talk. Lots of communication. They get bored easily. They just have this desire to talk, to text, to write. They're my clients. I always know the Gemini Mercuries because I'm like, did you want me to read your chart or did you just want to have a conversation? Because they want to have a dialogue with you. It's not enough for them to just sit and listen. They have to be communicating. And they're an air sign, so that's a masculine energy, so it flows out of the person. Now, as I said, they can become easily bored. They can be a little shallow. They can be a little surface. Look at the rest of the chart to get a feel for, where this person's, look at their moon, look at, not that it's related to the Mercury, but just to get a feel for their emotional nature. If you could have somebody who has a Scorpio moon and could be deeply, emotionally intense on the inside, but might have kind of this front on the outside where they're all bubbly and cheerful. But if you really knew them, they're kind of conflicted, So you got to look at the whole chart, all right? Also with Gemini, an issue you can have is too many things, taking on too many projects, never finishing anything, like reading 5 books at once and never finishing a single one of them. Just like bouncing from thing to thing to thing. It's that exploration, getting bored. So they can have a shallowness to them. They can prefer to keep things sort of more surface and more humorous and jokey and making fun of things and mercurial rather than going deeper and being a little bit more intense with their communication style. Our second mutable sign is going to be Virgo. So Virgo is ruled by Mercury. So see both of these, both Gemini and Virgo are our really strong Mercury. So anybody who has The Mercury in Virgo is different. I have this placement. This is a placement where you're analytical. Your mind likes to name things, categorize things, critique things. It likes to understand there's a standard for how things should be done, and then it likes to see when something is off standard, which is probably why I showed horses, showed dogs growing up, showed cats with my grandma. These are all sort of, there's categories, there's these breeds, and there's this right way to do things, and that's why I love astrology and personality typing, color analysis, like all of these things that have to do with, there are categories, there are ways to organize the world around us that give the world meaning. That's Virgo. Problem with Virgo, we can ruminate too much, we can worry, we can be, there's a hypercritical tendency with Virgo, and there's a coolness with Virgo. So Virgo can be cool and can be quite rational and can remove times when it should be more caring and more nurturing or emotional. It can move purely into that Mercury because it's very strong. That Mercury is, anytime you have a planet in your chart that's very, it's a dignified planet, you know, when it's in the sign that it rules, it's like there's nothing modifying it. It's just 100% pure Virgo Mercury. Like I'll use myself as an example. I have a moon in Aries and a Mars in Cancer. So I've got this mutual reception between my moon and Mars. And so sometimes in relationships, I can be very passionate, but then I can also detach. If there's a crisis, I detach and become very cool and not be at all able to function or able to access my moon, my heart, the caring part of me, if that makes sense. So you got to look at the whole chart, especially with these Geminis and these Virgos, look at everything else, and everything else is sort of interacting with one another to see how this person is going to use that Mercury. Look at the house placement as well. That'll give you a little bit more information. Mine's in the first house. Sorry, that's why I talk fast. Can't help it. I try to slow down and it's blah. I'm talking much slower than my brain is working, so there's that. Okay, Sagittarius. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, so look at the Jupiter. I love these ones. Sag Mercuries are open, they are expansive, they are very generous with their communication. They're the kinds that kind of TMI you. You know, they're just like, oh, guess what I did last night, you know. They're forward thinking, so they're some good hair here. They're forward thinking, so they're looking to the future. They're risk taking, adventurous. They like to try new things, you know, with their thought processes. So they're always coming up with new ideas, new projects, new plans. If you know, to look at house placement to give you a little bit more information about which area of their life this shows up. And if it was their first house, it could just be they themselves are a little self-aggrandizing or a little, you know, over the top with their ego expression. If it's in their 10th house, then you could have somebody who's quite ambitious, somebody who is sort of shooting for the moon, shooting for the stars, and very, you know, needs to be a communicator that's being heard. It's part of what they do for work. Somebody who's like this charismatic speaker, or somebody who can even be somebody who's in law, actually. But there is, with this optimism, there can be a naivete with Sagittarius Mercury. There can be a sort of just overly optimistic, overly risk-taking, not really looking at the dark side of things. It's interesting because Sagittarius is opposite of Gemini, and both of these Mercuries tend to be like, don't show me the bad stuff, I just want to see the good stuff. They don't like when you, like me with my Virgo Mercury, that's really critical and analytical. A lot of times Sagittarius Mercuries are like, just don't worry about it, just get over it, you know. They could be a little annoyed by that because it's like they want to go. They're fire. They want to just make the decision and pull quickly and get going on it, and let's do this, rather than analyzing everything. They don't really see the need for that. Finally, Pisces. This is our last sign. Pisces, this is our water, our mutable water sign. There is an intuition with a Mercury in Pisces. There's a creativity, this desire to sometimes escape into fantasy, a desire to, which can many times show up as artistic gift. You can have someone who's a poet, someone who's a musician, someone who is, or someone who just enjoys these things. Even somebody who enjoys like video gaming, terraforming, this idea of like creating worlds online, like virtual gaming and things like that. That's very Pisces Mercury. Also, again, look at house placement and look at all the aspects and all that good stuff, but I always have to add that disclaimer. But there is a natural desire to sort of merge with the collective what is, and whether that is through spirituality, whether that's through sort of escapist thinking. Sometimes, man, especially if you've got like a Mercury retrograde, I haven't even talked about that in this video. Mercury retrograde in Pisces, they can become so inward, so focused on their own inner kind of world that they seem very spacey. They seem sort of removed. They seem kind of out of it. They're the kinds that as a kid they get told that they're off in dreamland, fantasy land, not in class, like focus on your schoolwork kind of a thing. But they're also the ones who are observing and absorbing a lot from all around them. So many times if you can get them to open up to you, they have some profound observations. I have a daughter that has this placement, and she is very much one that half the time you're like, she's so quiet, you don't even know she's there. And then the next day or a day later, she's like, remember when we were talking about blah, blah, blah? And you wouldn't have even known you didn't even think she was participating, but she was still absorbing everything from that conversation and kind of thinking about it. It's feminine. Remember, it's introverted. So overall, that's the 12 zodiac signs. And so on this next video, I'm going to make one to show how the different Mercuries, how they kind of communicate with one another as far as just by modality. All right. Now with Mercury, if you've got two people whose Mercuries are in nice flowing aspects, let's say they're conjunct one another, they sextile one another, meaning you've got signs that are in elements that are different elements, but they're complementary elements, okay? Or you've got a couple who their Mercuries are in different signs, but they are in the same element, so they trine one another. These are all going to be comfortable flowing Mercury interaspects, meaning I get how you're communicating. I can almost finish your sentence, or you don't even have to say no more. I hear what you're saying. It's this just simpatico with the way that you think, with the way that you learn, with the way that you process language, which is wonderful in relationships of any kind. Don't be a barker, except for my dog. He's the canine. Your Mercury's in canine. It's barking at every single sound he ever hears. But anyway, okay. So, with this nice simpatico with the Mercuries, obviously it's wonderful in any kind of relationship, whether you're friends, your lovers, your family members, co-workers, because you understand one another. There aren't those miscommunications. Please, though, look and see if there are either of the Mercuries are in the individual birth charts are poorly aspected. You can have somebody whose Mercury squares Saturn and they have a need to have a high degree of control over the way that they communicate and the way that they're understood. And so these types you could have the type of person who is quite rigid in their thinking process, or they just have this need to say things just the right way and to be understood just the right way. And so they can worry that they were misunderstood and they can read into things and blah, blah, blah. So you, again, look at both of the birth charts. Look and see also if you've got things such as Mars. This is somebody who probably, if you got someone with a tight Mars aspect to their Mercury in their birth chart, they probably like to argue a little bit, or there's a quality of fieriness and passion and energy to the way that they communicate. Venus Mercury aspects would give somebody a desire to communicate in a harmonious, in a way that's social, in a way that's going to be, there's an element of diplomacy applied to their expression. There can be beauty as well. You can have someone who's actually artistic, or somebody who is socially conscious and tactful and kind with their communication style. So much so that they are forgetting to be aggressive when they need to be or when they should be. They can maybe not always say what's really on their mind. Okay, etc. So you go through the planets and you get my drift here. Then when you look at these two Mercuries that are, back to our couple, these two Mercuries that are compatible with one another, you're going to have an idea, a little more of a picture about how these two people are going to communicate. Might I add, if Neptune is in the mix, so if you've got either person with a strong Mercury-Neptune. Neptune adds an element of confusion or fantasy or idealism to the way that this person thinks, all right? It can be one where the person who has Neptune to their Mercury cannot always be honest with themselves, like they're not even seeing the truth themselves, or they're in this fantasy la la land, that it translates in the communication with you, in your relationship, where you're not quite sure if they're telling the truth, where they may be outright lying. There can be elements of deception with this. But to me, Neptune is more about typically it's more about the person just kind of not even seeing it themselves, not even understanding the truth themselves, the reality themselves, okay? So if that makes any sense. Now let's talk about when you've got Mercury aspects that are hard. So let's say you've got Mercury square Mercury. I will use an example. Let's say you've got a Taurus Mercury. It's a very fixed, stubborn, rigid Mercury. You know, it's somebody who many times, you know, they want to communicate in such a way that there's a harmony there. They want to have a nice, peaceful relationship, a peaceful relating with another person. But Taurus is also, again, opinionated, fixed, kind of can be rigid and dogmatic at times. And so let's say you've got an Aquarius Mercury. Oh, geez, this would be fun. An Aquarius Mercury, which is someone who is, okay, so Taurus is interested in conservation. Okay, Taurus Mercury is interested in, we've got things plugging along just fine in my life. Let's say this is someone who is, we're going to say this is a married couple. The woman is, if she's got her Mercury in Taurus, okay? And the man's got his Mercury in Aquarius. This is going to be fun. Your Mercury in Taurus person, look at her Venus to get more of an idea of how this is playing out. Let's say she's got a Venus in Taurus as well, just to make it extra Taurus-y. She is going to be stubborn. She's going to want her way. And I love you guys. I love Venus or Mercury and Taurus. This is no offense. But just if there's a fight, she's going to really push for her position. She's going to not drop the issue. She's going to keep wanting to talk about it until it's been resolved. That's true for Mercury and Scorps as well. There's this, they can't let it go. They can't just drop it, okay? But our Mercury in Aquarius is going to detach. And the Mercury in Aquarius already thinks that he knows everything that he needs to know about this, and he's going to approach the conversation from a place of detachment. And also there's a rigidity to Mercury in Aquarius, there can be, but he's going to approach it from a place of, they can be cool, they can be critical, they can be like, what's your problem? Why are you being so, why are you trying to bully me into this? Why are you making a big deal over this? This is not a big deal. They can sort of blow it off. Or Mercury in Aquarius also, being that they're innovative problem solvers, it will annoy that this man with the Mercury in Aquarius, that his female is being so set in her ways, and he will be sort of baffled as to, I don't even know what to say to you. I already told you how I feel about this. You disagree. Stop trying to make me take on your perspective. Like, I see where you're coming from. Mercury in Aquarius is open. They're definitely they're that collectivizing. That's Aquarius. They would want to understand where you're coming from, but they are going to have an opinion about it. And if they disagree with where you're coming from, they're not going to budge. Okay, so that's why with the fixed signs, and also they've got that know-it-all quality to them. And Mercury in Aquarius can be mean. If they're detached from emotion, so they can be kind of they can totally discount and disqualify perhaps that Mercury and Taurus's emotional viewpoint, let's say, if that makes sense. So Mercury obviously is very important with your coworkers. If you've got someone that you cannot get along well with, that you argue with, if you've got someone that it's like, I sent you that email, did you not get it? And it seems like, the communication is always falling through, or the communication is completely obfuscated between the two of you. You probably have Neptune. You probably have, first of all, some Mercury issues, and you probably have Neptune in the mix as well. I wouldn't be surprised. Neptune, Mercury inner aspects, that's another topic. So again, study each of the individual Mercuries, get to know those well, then put them together, and you should have a pretty clear picture about how the communication style will go down between the two of you. Look at house placements as well. Those always modify the individual Mercuries. And in the house overlays, look at the houses where those Mercuries fall. Where does your partner's Mercury fall in your chart, and vice versa? That will show you the areas of communication, the things you guys will be talking about. So hope that was helpful. If you have questions or comments or thoughts, post them below. And if you're looking for a reading, give me a call. Come get on my schedule, moderncosmic.com. Have an awesome day. Okay, bye-bye.